Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Public Accounts. It is January 12th. And as with all meetings, I recognize I didn't start with it last time, but our mandate and statement of purpose and values, new year, will continue that process. So our mandate, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts is charged with matters concerning the public accounts of the province and the annual report of the Auditor General and fiscal management. Our statement of purpose and values. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts is dedicated to improving public administration in partnership with the Auditor General. The committee examines the administration of government policy, not the merits of it. The committee strives to achieve consensus in its decisions whenever possible. Committees take a nonpartisan approach to the work of the committee. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all the members. We have Robbie Henderson, Gord McNeely, Corey Deagle, Cindy McEwen, and Carla Bernard with us today. And we also have in attendance our members from the PEI Liquor Control Commission and PEI Cannabis Management Corporation. I'd like to welcome Quentin Bevan, who's the chair, James McLeod, acting chief executive officer, and Carl Adams, who is the chief financial officer. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. So I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Gord McNeely. And members, we have both our guests today are representing both the PEI Liquor Commission as well as the PEI Cannabis Management Corporation. They have two separate presentations. There is overlap, and so for essence of fluidity, if we allow them to do both at the same time, so they would start with the Liquor Control Commission first, and then move on to the Cannabis Management Corporation. Is that okay with the members? And we'll just hold our questions till the end. Okay. So without further ado, Quentin, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned, with me today, we have James McLeod, who is the CEO of both organizations, as well as Carl Adams, who is our CFO of both organizations. Thank you for the invitation. How we thought we might proceed, as you mentioned, we're going to do both presentations. There's a lot of overlap in the two organizations, from management to board to operations. How we thought we might do our batting order is our CEO would go through operations and an overview. I would then jump in and do kind of a board mandate and have the board functions, and then we would have Carl back clean up and do an overview of the finances. So with that, we'll turn it to Jamie to start.
Good morning. I was told to say my name, Jamie McLeod. First of all, we'll deal over very quickly on our legislation regulation authority. We have one piece of legislation, which is the Act itself. There's accompanying Liquor Control Act regulations, and then there's a separate set of regulations dealing with agency stores. Both of these regulations and the Act themselves have a commercial responsibility, that is the purchase, control, and sale of alcohol in the province of Prince Edward Island. Relative to their regulatory role, we are responsible for compliance, licensing, inspection, and enforcement. And all of these are underpinned by a very strong social responsibility role that the corporation is responsible for. Moving on to buying and the importation of liquor, we're the sole importer of liquor into the province of Prince Edward Island and the subsequent resale of that product. Currently, we purchase from approximately 823 manufacturers from all over the world. Of those, approximately 20 right now are based out of Prince Edward Island. We do annual calls throughout the year, and we break them down. We do wine by country on a monthly basis from September through to January. In that regard, we probably receive about 1,300 applications in the run of a year. Our RTD products, we handle that in October of each year. That includes ciders, and we probably get in the area of about 400 applications. Beer is handled in November, and we get in the area of about 350 applications per year. Spirits is done in April, and we get about 175 applications. In addition to the annual calls, we do individual calls throughout the year for liquor. We have one-time offers that suppliers will come to us and want to do a special run on a particular product, or we may approach a product, a special product, and want to list it for a one-time offer. We run probably about 60 of those years. We do seasonal specials such as Christmas, Black Friday. In total, they're probably in the range of 50 to 75. Our wine, beer, and spirits festival also require special calls out to our suppliers to get listings for those events. With the wine festival, it's usually in the area of about 550 applications we receive. Spirits is about 180. The beer festival we do not handle. That is handled by a local beer company. They run that particular beer festival. When we also have to, obviously, we can't carry every product, so when we bring in new products, we sometimes have to delist products. So we do a very detailed category analysis. We look obviously at the sales of the particular product. We look at our category requirements, the shelf life of a particular product, because some products can only stay on the shelf for so long before they're no longer able to be consumed. We look at our price points, and we also look at promotional support from the suppliers, because we do have marketing programs. So if they're supportive of our marketing programs and buying in, then that's a key consideration as well. When we look at our listings that we currently have in the province, we have just over 2,700, as you can see. Broken down currently, it's beer is at 348, wine is at 1,639, spirits is 693, and our RTDs are at 105. It's interesting to note that our Canadian-made products represent about 30% of our total portfolio. Product coming out of the United States is about 8%, and the other countries around the world are 62%. Our PEI-made products total about 164 listings currently. That includes 83 beer, 42 wines, 29 spirits, and 10 RTD products. Getting these particular products from not just PEI but around the world, how quickly we get it varies by region. Within PEI, it usually takes us from the time we place this order no more than 5 days. We can get the product back to us. For the rest of Canada, with the exception of Alberta and BC, it's usually about a 10-day turnaround. Alberta and BC, it's usually in the area of about 28 days maximum. On the United States end, on the East Coast, it usually takes anywhere up to 35 days for the product to get into PEI. The West Coast of the United States is 50 days, and internationally, it's anywhere from 28 to 94 days before the product arrives in our shores. As far as getting the product actually into our warehouse, our mainstream beer, which is Molson, Labatt, and Moosehead, they have their own freight carriers, so they direct deliver into us. For Ontario and Eastern Canada, we have a contract with Seafood Express. The rest of Canada, Manitoba and West, and the continental United States, with the exception of California, we use various freight carriers, and we have freight quotes with them. For California and the rest of the world, we have 2 agreements in place with our Atlantic counterparts with those liquor boards. One is a joint international freight agreement. It allows us to all order. It helps ensure full container loads. The costs are prorated by province, and all the product is shipped, because it's coming in by sea, goes to the Halifax seaport. From there, we have a joint destuffing, what we call a joint destuffing contract. All product is then shipped by Irma Transport to their depot in Halifax, and it's sorted by province. We then have Seafood Express come from PEI to pick that product up and deliver it to PEI. Our estimation is, partnering with our 3 Atlantic provinces, we're probably saving the province of Prince Edward Island roughly $100,000 a year in expense. Now that we've got the product to the island, How do we get it to our stores? We have 18 stores that are owned by the Liquor Control Commission, and there are 3 streams that the liquor gets to those stores. Molson, Labatt, and Moosehead do direct delivery. We have our own trucks that deliver product. And then we have 6 island manufacturers who actually deliver product as well. That's non-keg product, and for that we pay them 33 cents a liter. We have 8 agency stores, and there's 2 streams to get the product to those stores. Again, Molson, Labatt, and Moosehead will direct deliver to the agency stores. The rest of the product, the agency stores are responsible to pick it up. As far as our other licensed premises, restaurants and bars, and those types of operations, the license holders are responsible to come to the liquor control warehouse to pick up the product. The actual selling of the liquor. Obviously, we set the selling price in both our corporate and agency stores. With the agency stores, it's a 5% higher markup, but they do get a discount on the purchasing. It's 15% up to $250,000 and then 6% above $250,000. The selling of liquor to licensed premises and to permit holders. Our license holders receive a 10% discount on wine, spirits, and ready-to-drink product, and they also get a $6 discount on 24-bottle packs of beer. That's probably a saving to the licensees, and in turn, a cost to the Liquor Control Commission in the area of about $1.1 million a year. It's interesting to note that the biggest liquor board in Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, offers 0% discount to their license holders. As far as where our stores are located, one of the roles of the Liquor Commissions is to make recommendations to the minister responsible for the Liquor Control Commission. 2 most recent examples that I can think of would be our Wood Islands in Wellington corporate stores, which were converted over to agency store operations. As far as establishing the agency stores themselves, once the Commission receives direction and locations have been identified, then we issue a public RFP to select the vendor and then regulate the operations. Very quickly on our marketing programs for our suppliers. Based on experiences with liquor, the marketing periods are not divided by months, they're divided by marketing periods, 9 in total, and we have 6 program categories. We have on-shelf programming, we have retail display programming, chilled product, we have advertising possibilities for the suppliers, in-store tastings, and we have a notables marketing package for our new store at Founders Hall. As I mentioned at the outset, social responsibility is a very important part of the Liquor Control Commission. And in that regard, just even with our corporate and agency stores, we have our Check 30 program in place. I should note that originally, going back as far as 2006, it was Check 25, and then we replaced it, and since 2016, it's been Check 30. We also have a mystery shopper program, which goes into both our own stores and the agency stores to do checks relative to not just customer services, but the IDing of customers as well. These are people that we employ through a contract who are of age but look younger than of age and attempt to buy alcohol, and we get full detailed reports on the outcome of those visits. Obviously, in both these facilities, the corporate and the agency stores, we have brochures relative to responsible consumption, effects of alcohol, so as a result, we have an FSAD pamphlet, we have a host brochure. Obviously, with the advent of COVID, those have been displaced, but these publications are available on our website. Our staff training is a very key important part of our business. For our store staff, we have 3 levels of product knowledge that are available to them. Our systems and business processes are again a key component in the training of our staff. Our internal administration manual covers a wide range of operations, which is the responsibility of our managers. Our customer services is also covered, and our legal and regulations as well. ID training is provided. That is usually provided by our liquor inspectors, and we also offer that to our agency store operators as well. Loss prevention and security is also a big component of our business. And in that regard, our store managers, our supervisor of regulatory operations, and our liquor inspectors play the lead role. Occupational health and safety is another component. And again, the same three individuals, the store managers, supervisor of operations, and the inspectors play key components in the training of staff in that. I had mentioned our portfolio earlier. I don't know if the next slide will show it. Carl, if you want to click it up there. There we go. So we have 18 outlets. 5 are owned in terms of the actual building itself. Those locations that we own are in Tignish, Alberton, North Rustico, Cardigan, and Surrey. Leased premises are located in O'Leary, Tyne Valley, Borden, Kensington, and Cornwall. In Summerside, both our stores are leased premises, Granville Street and the Waterfront Mall. And in Charlottetown, our West Royalty, Oak Tree, Queen Street, and the Notable store are leased. In addition, Stratford and Montague. As far as our agency stores are concerned, we have 6 year-round operations. They are located in Wellington, Kincora, East Royalty, Eldon, Murray Harbor, and Morrell. 2 seasonal operations are in Cavendish and Wood Islands. As far as our own operations at the administration level, if I may call it that, we have 2 offices and 2 warehouses. Our Garfield Street, Charlottetown location, which houses our main office and our main warehouse. They are owned by the government. We also rent space on Mount Edward Road for our secondary office, and we have a secondary warehouse on Day Avenue, which is leased. Regulatory, excuse me. Licensing, we do licensing and permit application approvals and denials. I should also mention we provide regular reports to the police and the RCMP on approvals, so they are aware of what places are being licensed. As far as the compliance, that incorporates inspections, education, and sanctions. And I might also mention the Liquor Control Commission is responsible for the Smoke-Free Places Act in licensed premises. In that regard, if we find any infractions, we report those to Environmental Health, and the Department of Health then makes the determination what, if any, sanction would be placed on that particular premise. I won't go through all the different types of licenses and numbers. You see them there before you, but what I would add to the slide there is that 74 of those are seasonal operations. Although there are 640 licenses in total, the actual number of places that are actually licensed across the province is in the area of about 438. The reason being a number of these places held more than 1 liquor license. Relative to the winery license, it indicates 7. Just to give you a breakdown on that, there are actually 4 what we call cottage winery licenses, 2 large firm winery licenses, and 1 small firm winery license. And the ferment on premise, which is sometimes called U-Brew, U-Vin operations, we have 6 of those in the province at the present time. Relative to the permits, and I guess maybe for very, very quickly, I'll say permits, unlike a liquor license, what we call Class 1 and a Class 2 are 1-day permits. So a Class 1 is somebody who wants to give away liquor, be it at a wedding reception or something like that. So we approve that. A Class 2 is to resell the liquor, and only nonprofit organizations are eligible to apply for that. Third type of permit we have would be a manufacturer's permit. That's good for 1 year. Examples of that would be companies, individuals that are putting alcohol into products such as jams, chocolates. They use it in herbs, skincare, cakes, that type of thing. Scientific pursuits, that's also a one-year permit. Organizations that have applied to the Commission for those type of permits would include the Canadian Food Inspections Agency, Agriculture Canada, and some research firms. We also have a permit for the clergy if they wish to use wine for sacramental uses. Quite frankly, I can't recall in the over 15 years I've been with Liquor Control Commission ever receiving an application. The hospital, they do on rare occasion apply for alcohol, and again, that permit is for 1 year. Obviously, the advent of COVID has certainly impacted the number of permits that we issue. In a normal year, if I can use that term, we would easily exceed 250 in total in the run of a year. Year to date, we've issued 47. Class 1 and the Class 2 are 27, and the other type of permits that I went through have totaled 20 to date. In terms of the compliance of the licensed premises, be it restaurants, bars, this type of thing, every place is inspected at least once a year. We use a risk management-based approach to determine the frequency, and the factors that we use to determine that would include the clientele base, past history of the premise, police reports. We have very good communications with police, and other intelligence that we may receive. That could be from the general public to the staff themselves reporting on matters that are going on within the premises. On average, it's probably 3,100 inspections that we do on the run of a year. It can vary, obviously, but I should also note in this current year, our inspections as it currently stands are down, obviously, but we've redeployed our inspectors, and I know they've assisted the Department of Health and Wellness in doing COVID-related inspections, and I believe to date it's somewhere in the area of about 135 for those type of inspections that our inspectors have done. Permit inspections, those are determined on a case-by-case basis. Again, back to the social responsibility component again, how important we consider this. For bars and restaurants, anybody that holds a liquor license, everybody must have a mandatory beverage server training certificate. At the current time, we're the only province in Atlantic Canada that has made that mandatory. I know New Brunswick has recently announced that they may be moving to that state. We've had conversations with our other Atlantic provinces to try and get us, if you will, on the same page, but the other provinces to date in Atlantic Canada have no interest in moving to making it mandatory. The program that we have in place is delivered by Holland College through the Culinary Institute. It's reviewed on an annual basis, and it's now a truly made and PEI made product, because I know the last time we updated it, we used government IT services, and we did video shots using people in local licensed premises, updated the content and everything else in that regard. Our inspectors do on-site meetings, special meetings with licensed premises on operations and any issues that they may have. We offer ID training to the management and staff of these places, and in some we book it in every year because they want annual updates on the ID training. So it's become well recognized and appreciated, I believe, by the licensee community. Our Check 30 program that we use in our liquor stores and the HC stores, I think it's fair to say that all our licensed premises have adopted that approach as well. When it comes to licensed premises and how they sell the liquor, the Commission sets the minimum selling price. Why we do that is to prevent increased or excess consumption in these premises because of low pricing. Based on the standard serving size, the current minimum price for an alcoholic beverage is $3.50, all taxes in. So that would include a beer of a 12-ounce serving a wine of 5-ounce glass, or a 1.5 shot of a spirit-based. Enforcement, again, is a key component. Anything that is non-compliant is reported to Chairman Bevan and the Board for the Liquor Control Commission. The evidence is presented to the Board with our legal counsel in attendance. The Board has established penalty guidelines for all infractions of the Act and regulations. Having said that, however, each case is evaluated on its own merits, and then the Board makes its decision. The Board has the authority to issue warnings, fines, suspensions, or actual cancellation of a liquor license. As far as the social responsibility, some of the initiatives that we have done, both targeted and for the general public, would include MAD. They do school presentations. They had started last year in the fall and concluded because of the advent of COVID. I believe their last presentation was around December the 14th. Up to that point, from October when they had started, they had gotten into 11 high schools, intermediate schools, and elementary schools across the province. As far as the continuation of that, they're in contact with the remaining schools, and we'll see how that plays out. We provide funding as requested to the Department of Health in the past. Examples would be Canada's low-risk drinking guidelines, and we've provided the funding for the Health Department to run an ad in local television. We provided funding for FSAD brochuring. We've partnered with Department of Transportation and MAD. We had billboards up relative to calling 911 with regard to impaired driving. We have a Keep It Social program that runs at UPEI and Collin College. That would include on-site information for students. It's actually a student-led program, and in coordination with that, we've done both bus and van wraps at the university. It's interesting to note that KDU University, this program was actually founded in Nova Scotia, and a professor in Nova Scotia at KDU University has evaluated the program and has given it amazing positive response. We've partnered with Charlottetown Police Department on a couple occasions, again, with van wraps. One was first liquor, and then the second one was a combination of liquor and cannabis. We've partnered with the local major junior hockey team, the Charlottetown Islanders. We produced an in-house video, which aired on local TV last month. We have rink board signage. We even had a contest on the back of a ticket a year or so ago promoting the low-risk drinking guidelines. We partnered with the Summerside Western Capitals Junior A hockey team out of Summerside. We partnered with PEI Crime Stoppers. We had responsible consumption promotion within their annual magazine, and a number of years ago, we also did date rape club drugs. As far as the Liquor Control Commission itself, we use traditional media, social media accounts, our website, digital web boards. We have SR messaging, host booklet, don't drink and drive, don't buy alcohol for minors, safe grad tips for parents and students. Nationally, the Liquor Control Commission is a member of the Social Responsibility, which is part of the Canadian Association of Liquor Jurisdictions. Of more recent would be the sharing of ideas through that committee. That is where we learned of the Keep It Social program in Nova Scotia, which we adopted and then has since moved into New Brunswick and into Newfoundland. And it's my understanding that Quebec is also now interested in it. It's also at that conference where we learned of the move of first of Check 25, and we implemented that, and then we also learned of the move to Check 30, and we did that, and date rape club drugs. In the past, we used to do national campaigns around don't drinking and driving, and they would be summer campaigns, winter campaigns. Pound Taxi was another one that we were involved with. Finally, to wrap up, although not social responsibility in the sense of overconsumption, but is, if you will, a corporate citizen of the province, and to support where we can. We make our facilities available for a number of major annual campaigns of what we consider important contributors to the way of life in PEI. They would include the Cancer Society, the Red Cross, Diabetes Canada, Heart and Stroke, Island Nature Trust. And then we also have our own gift giving card campaign in December, which supports the Children's Wish Foundation, food banks, homeless shelters, and those types of things. In total, through all those initiatives, we raise probably in excess of $135,000 a year for those organizations. And that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll move on to talk a little bit about the board. Our board is made up of 5 members. These members are appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. A term is 3 years, and members are eligible for an additional appointment of 3 years after that. Our mandate of the board is quite simply to supervise the business affairs of the commission. Things like that would include approving a 3-year corporate strategic plan, which we would review annually. Within that, there's a business plan which is monitored and checked annually. Well, more than that, but at least annually. We would review and approve any sanctions for non-compliance of licensees or manufacturers. And in terms of policies, we would review and change those as necessary. Policy manuals that would need to be accessed by licensees or manufacturers are available on our website. Other manuals that the board would be dealing with would be things like our board governance policy, loss prevention, occupational health and safety, things like that. In terms of meetings, our board would meet once a month. Things that would be on the agenda every month would be things like store operations, sales, customer counts, average sales, we call it average basket size per customer. And we would have Carl come in as well, and we'd go through a very detailed analysis of our financial statements for the last month end. And we would also review any sanctions, any violations that our inspectors may have found, and we would discuss and approve any violations that were warranted. There are some times where special meetings are required in between these monthly meetings. It's not really common, but it does happen from time to time. When COVID first hit our shores, there was obviously a lot of changes happening very quickly every day, every hour it seemed, and so there were a number of special meetings required. Those were over the phone, as have all our meetings been since COVID, have not been in person. As far as board governance would go, we would review that policy quite often. One thing that's in that we would spend a little bit of time on would be our board audit committee. It's a subcommittee of our board. One of our board members is what we would call our audit chair. That individual would be our contact, our board's contact with our auditor, so that there isn't a buffer between our financial auditors and the board. That board would meet, a little more frequently during the audit, but a couple of times outside of that period as well, just to do a check-in. Those meetings would be quick. They would be before a regular board meeting, usually about a half hour in length. And that board would make any recommendations to our regular board that the auditor may identify as well. Another thing that we would spend a little bit of time on in terms of our board would be our corporate and strategic business plans. These are approved annually but reviewed and discussed quarterly. A lot of things that would be in that, or a big part of that, would be our budgeted revenues and expenses, Those will be reviewed before being submitted to Treasury for our final approval. Also within that strategic plan are things like our vision and mission statements, our stated values, our 4 strategic pillars, which I'll dig into a little bit more. Those strategic pillars are kind of the blueprint that guide senior staff and our board on how we're performing. They are financial results, customer service, corporate social responsibility, and people and culture. And within those kind of 4 strategic pillars, we break them down, and we have metrics, different performance metrics that we would measure. I won't go through all of them, but things such as financial results, for example, there are 15 metrics that we would measure against, things such as gross receipts, gross profit, our return to government, average basket size per customer, those sort of things. The other pillars, customer service, we have 3 performance measures that we would measure things against: total customer served, average customer transactions, liters sold, things like that. Corporate social responsibility, which Jamie spoke a lot about, is obviously very important to us. We have 5 measures there. We have that we check ourselves against. They are number of ID checks as a percentage of total transactions, funds raised for charities and foundations, things of that nature. People and culture is the last one that that is one of our pillars, and that has 4 performance measures and things such as training hours per employee per year, employee excellence plan completion rate, employee wellness rate, and lost time frequency. So that is a brief overview of a few things that the board would discuss and manage on an ongoing basis. And with that, I'll turn it over to Carl to talk a little bit about our finances.
Okay. Starting with the, excuse me, with our annual audit, we have engaged an external professional accounting firm. We have there is a choice between the Auditor General and the external accounting firm. We have gone the route of an external accounting firm for various reasons. There is a board audit committee that's fully engaged in the complete process, and believe me, they are fully engaged. Approved by the board, all our statements are approved by the board, included in the annual report for the commission. Statements are provided to the Provincial Controller's Office for inclusion in the public accounts. Monthly statements, internal statements, are reviewed and approved by the board on a monthly basis, and any questions that are asked are either answered at that board meeting, or if I don't have the immediate answer, it's followed up with either an email or at the next board meeting. Purchasing, all purchases except liquor fall under the Treasury Board policies and procedures, so we abide by those guidelines. Liquor is mandated by the Act to be signed off by the CEO. Liquor is purchased via purchase order, which is signed by the CEO. In absence of the CEO, a written notice is issued by the CEO's office identifying the temporary signing authority for the in place of what would be normally signed by the CEO. Excuse me. Payments, signing authority is approved by the board, and it follows the guidelines of Treasury Board Policy and Procedures Manual. Checks require a dual signature. Electronic approvals, wires, that sort of thing, require 2 approvers as well as a setup person, and the 3 of them can't be the same. Authorized dollar value is set by the board. It was approved at the latest July 20th. CEO is unlimited. The CFO is up to $100,000, and then we have Director of Purchasing to $100,000, financial analyst to $100,000 for checks only. He's a co-signer on the checks. He cannot initiate a purchase. So, we're finished.
Okay, Carl, thank you for that. With your guys' permission, we'll go right into the Cannabis Management Corporation. it will be a little briefer because there are a lot of similarities between the two organizations. So this is an organization that's very new. It was established because of the federal government legalization of cannabis, obviously, and which was October 2018. So with that, we'll jump right in, and I'll turn it over to our CEO, Jamie, to start that off.
Thank you. Yes, this should be very much shorter. With cannabis, we deal with one act, one set of regulations. Our functions, there are only two, as opposed with liquor. As you may recall, there was a regulatory function. There's no regulatory function with the Cannabis Management Corporation. So with commercial, it's the purchase and distribution, the sale of cannabis, and with the social responsibility, that would be facilitating and promoting responsible consumption of the product. So we are responsible for adult use cannabis on the recreational side of this. We currently purchase from 26 manufacturers in Canada, 2 of which are based in PEI. So again, unlike liquor, there's no international purchasing here. Everything is within the Canadian borders. As far as purchasing the product from suppliers, again, unlike liquor, it's intermittent calls by category to apply for new listings. The industry isn't saturated like liquor now, and there's no international component, but we certainly do rigorous analysis before we add any new product onto our portfolio. Product delisting is somewhat similar to liquor in the fact that it is by category analysis, and we certainly look at sales and where the product is going. Those are the 2 key components at this time because it's such a new industry. As far as what we have listed, and I think the slide will show it there. I won't bother the committee reading it. You can see it there. I can add to the slide, we have of the 60 island-made products, 31 are under what they call dried flower, 13 are pre-rolled, 9 are ingested extracts, and 7 are edible products. In terms of how long it gets the product to us, it depends on the supplier and where it's coming from within Canada. Usually it's anywhere from a 10 to 30-day turnaround period. Unlike liquor, the suppliers make all the arrangements and deliver the product to our warehouse. The delivery to the cannabis stores is made by our Liquor Control Commission trucks. We set the selling price in the corporate stores, and if there were to be any store locations, obviously we would make recommendations to the minister responsible. Unlike liquor, the merchandising periods right now are on a monthly basis until we see where this industry is going. We have 5 program categories. There's a strong emphasis on promotional restrictions in these promotions. They include retail displays, temporary price reductions, limited editions, some social media, and some data subscription plans where they can get information from us on sales. As far as the social responsibility component, we've done a large amount on impaired is impaired, working with Charlottetown Police, UPEI and Holland College. A lot of these are repeats from liquor, Charlottetown Islanders, Summerside Western Capitals. We've also worked with the Department of Tourism Visitors Guide, and we've also had postings in bus shelters. Check 30 is in place. We also do the MAD presentations also now include a cannabis component as well. We've worked with the Department of Health and Wellness. We paid for the video that was on TV about just the facts. Like liquor, we have a mystery shopper program that deals with customer service and ID checks. The website for PEI Cannabis has a range of responsible consumption topics, and we also have in the stores brochures and pamphlets regarding consumption. Corporate staff training, like liquor, big move on product knowledge. We have up to actually 10 modules of training within the product knowledge training offer that we have. And business processing, very similar to liquor, covering operations, customer service, legal and regulation requirements. ID training is provided to our staff. Loss prevention, occupational health, safety, again, the same components as with liquor. Currently, we have 4 stores. These are leased properties in Charlottetown. It's on Belvedere Avenue, Granville Street in Summerside, Main Street in Montague, and Main Street in Elyria. We also do online sales out of the Charlottetown Belvedere store. The office and main warehouse for PEI Cannabis is located in the same building as our PEI Liquor Control Commission head office on Garfield Street. And that's it.
So our board of directors, very similar. The 5 members are the same as the LCC. There is a chair, obviously myself, and a vice chair, same as LCC. Members are appointed by Lieutenant Governor and Council again, and exact same 3 years, eligible for another 3 years. In terms of our mandate, supervise the affairs of the corporation, review and adjust any policy manuals as required. Our monthly meetings are the same day, immediately following LCC, and certain things that would be on that agenda. We would go through our store operations, our current sales numbers, average basket size again. Carl would be there as well to do our detailed financial analysis, and same, there are some special meetings that are required. An example of that would be during COVID when our stores were closed, and online, which has not been as big of a component to our sales from when our stores first opened up to COVID. It was a lot less than we thought it might be when we were doing our business planning, but obviously when our stores closed, it was going to become a lot bigger part of it, so we met to discuss kind of our freight options and charges on shipping and things like that. That's just one example. Our board governance policy manual is reviewed annually at least, usually a little bit more than that. Once again, the board audit committee, same audit chair, serves in this role for Cannabis Management Corporation as well. And that's a fairly active committee, especially during the time of our audit. They would meet directly with the auditor to review anything and would report back to our audit committee and to the board as a whole. Our strategic business plan, similar to LCC, is reviewed quarterly, and also similar to LCC, has our vision and our mission statements, our strategic pillars, which are business results, customer experience, corporate citizenship, and people and culture. Similar, however, with some different performance metrics. So in terms of business results, those are a little similar. In terms of total revenue, gross margin, and net income are things that we would measure our performance against. When it comes to customer experience, this being a very new industry in PEI and Canada. One, obviously, of the goals of the legalization of this is the elimination of the illicit market. So one important thing that we would spend some time on is our customer experience, and we would score that against our customer experience score, customer counts, and unique SKUs sold. In terms of corporate citizenship, we would measure ourselves against investment in our corporate social responsibility initiatives, our retail responsible service score, and as well as our corporate citizenship survey score. The last of our pillars that we measure is our people and our culture, staff retention rate, employee engagement score, and employee wellness rate. With that, again, I will turn it over to our CFO, Carl.
Looking at it from the financial side of things, we have an annual audit that's required by legislation. We have a board audit committee, the same as liquor, fully engaged in the process. Our financial statements for the year, audit statements are approved by the board and included in an annual report of the corporation. And statements are provided again to the provincial controller's office for inclusion in the public accounts. These are just a few of the items that hold us responsible. Monthly financial statements are reviewed and approved by the board. And again, if I don't have the answer to a question, it's either sent out by email following the meeting, or it's addressed again at the next meeting. Purchasing, all purchases except for cannabis follow Treasury Board policies and procedure guidelines. Cannabis is purchased via purchase order and must be signed by the CEO as per the Act. Again, in the absence of the CEO, there must be a written notification signifying who has temporary signing authority for the purchase of cannabis. Payment, signing authority is approved by the board. Checks require dual signatures. Again, electronic requires dual approval as well as a setup person. And in neither instance can the originator be the purchaser. Authorized dollars value set by the board and approved in July of 2020. CEO again is unlimited. CFO is $100,000. The Director of Purchasing and Distribution is $100,000. The financial analyst only signs checks up to $100,000. And the Director of Cannabis Operations can authorize purchases up to $20,000 for non-cannabis products only. I think that's it.
Great, Carl, thank you. So that's it for our presentation of both those organizations. I turn it back
That's
over to
great.
yourself.
Okay, thank you for your presentations. I'll open the floor up for questions. Carla?
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering how the location at Founders Hall is performing.
Sure. So Notables is it's an interesting store. So it opened right in the middle of the pandemic, and although a struggle with no cruise ship visitors, obviously tourism is a big part of our business in those summer months. However, it has been performing good. December would have been our best month yet, and it's a store that I think in the fullness of time will be okay, but it's a little hard to judge it because of when it opened and what was going around in the world around us. So I think it's just going to take a little bit of time to answer that fully. But so far it's going, I think, as good as could be expected given all the circumstances. But December was our best month yet, and prior to that was August.
Carla?
Thank you, Chair. Do you have any planned expansions for any agency stores?
It's typically a government decision based on some recommendations. If we had a corporate store that was perhaps not performing well for whatever reason, but it's typically a government decision. Yeah.
Carla?
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering how you've pivoted or what changes you've made based on the growth of the industry on PEI. So the craft brewers, the distilleries, the wineries. How have you accommodated that?
So the craft brewers are a really good example. It's an industry that didn't exist, a number of years ago, and is new. So we would support them with there's a different markup structure for those craft brewers or any manufacturer who's island-based, and there's formulas for that. So they would, I guess, keep more of the selling price that they would sell it for. And then there are some other initiatives that we've taken as far as how would you describe that, Jamie? Price per liter, charges per liter kind of thing, would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some other things that we do for them as well, but we're also mindful now that there are significant obligations of the Liquor Control Commission to be compliant with international trade agreements. And over the last year and a half, give or take, there's been increasing pressures on different Canadian liquor boards to be compliant. And actually some that are before, I guess be called international tribunals right now, because some of the European countries have found that the liquor boards are not being compliant. So I won't name the provinces, but we're not one of them right now. But so that is one thing that we have to be mindful when we're doing what we can within the legalities to support island businesses for sure. But we do everything that we possibly can, as Chairman Bevan indicated.
Our markup structure for craft associations, distillers, wineries, breweries, is the same no matter where you come from in the world. So if you meet a certain criteria and you're in England, your markup structure will be the same as if it was a local island producer. However, local island producers get a at-gate markup structure where they're keeping almost all of what they produce, like their margin. Whereas somebody from Britain would not get that because they don't have a presence to sell at gate here.
Carla?
Okay. Now, so I'm not sure how this ties in, but there was something you said earlier about, so there's 6 local, I missed that part, but basically it was 33 cents a liter for local beer?
What I said was there's 6 island manufacturers who direct deliver non-keg product to our liquor stores. And those 6 manufacturers, we pay them the equivalent of 33 cents a liter to do that.
For the delivery.
For the delivery, yeah.
Okay, Carla?
Thank you. And so how would that compare to mainstream beer? That might be a silly question. Do they get paid, or do they pay the liter, the cents per liter?
No, we don't pay. That's built into the price when we buy it from them.
Okay, Carla?
And is there any, are there any areas where you see a change in legislation might be helpful to either support kind of local producers, manufacturers of these products? Are there any areas where you see that we could improve as a province?
That's a sort of a difficult question to answer because I think it's widely known that the Liquor Control Act for the province is fairly outdated. Much of it was written in 1947. So we're currently looking at it, have been looking at it. COVID has obviously impacted moving it along. A change in our CEO about 1.5 years ago also impacted that as well. We're mindful of, and we'll also look at what the other jurisdictions are doing. We do what we can at the present time under what we're allowed to do for island suppliers. Say we do some things within the stores that give them greater visibility. I mentioned earlier, so many of these license holders hold multiple licenses, and so do our manufacturers. So besides having a license to actually make alcohol, they may have a secondary license to actually sell liquor as well. So in that regard, they get that 10% discount that I mentioned before, which is that Nova Scotia is 5.5 times the size of our liquor sales. They're in excess of $660 million a year. And based on our most recent knowledge of how they operate over there, what we do to provide support to island producers, we far exceed Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation.
Okay, Carla, do you have a follow-up? And then I'll go to
Just
Robbie. Okay.
1947, it might be time to look that over again. Thank you, I'm good for now,
Okay.
too.
Robbie?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your presentation here. And I guess I've been one of the few people here that's been a former minister responsible for the Liquor Control Commission. I certainly want to commend you, Jamie, and Chair Quinton and Carl for your work on that. The one thing I took from being a minister was that the Liquor Control Commission really runs as a business corporation, and it is mandated to try to raise money and do responsible selling of the products. But those revenues are pretty significant, and they make a big difference. When I became Minister of Health, how those things become important. So I certainly want to commend you on that, and the board that's there. But I do have a few questions here, just to kind of, and I'll start, I guess, just to follow up with Carla's question just around the legislation. I know when I was minister, it was sort of recommended at that time that it was very antiquated legislation, and there was a need for it to be modernized. There's been 2 ministers since me that have been. So what has been the holdback, and why that hasn't been really taken to modernize this piece of legislation?
If I can say, there was a change at senior management level. The CEO departed about a year and a half ago. There's a change in government. And then the COVID, I would say those were the 3 biggest things. As you may or may not recall, and it's publicly aware, I believe, that there was a liquor policy review done internally by the Liquor Control Commission. It was presented to the Liquor Board, I believe, in June of 2019. It was shortly thereafter that the CEO at the day resigned. I can say there was roughly 27 recommendations out of that. Of those 27, I believe 4 or 5 of them were already being done. It was more of a recommended that the Liquor Commission continue along with those things. I know one recommendation that was since done, and that was the regulation change around allowing dining rooms to sell up to 2 standard drinks without a meal. We have before our minister currently, out of that report, 3 additional recommendations. We've completed our analysis and research, and that is before our minister now. And I don't want to preempt the minister of the government as to where they may go. So we are working on it. We're getting there.
Robbie?
If I could just
Oh,
add
sorry, go ahead,
to
Quentin.
that. And it hasn't been, a full stop after that. After this was written, there have been changes to it, as Jamie referred to, when the board or the government of the day, when there is a required change, it has happened. If it's an act change, there's obviously a little bit more of a process, but if it's a policy change, it's something within the board's ability to change, which has happened quite a number of times since I've been around.
Okay, Robbie?
Okay, thanks. Another question, and I'll talk a little bit more about the agency store concept. And I guess when I became minister, I think there was 1 agency store. I think we added 6 or 8 more during that period of time. It was at the time a rather controversial subject. I do remember Rustico been quite a meeting when we looked at adding a seasonal one in Cavendish, and I believe there was another very controversial one down around Wood Islands area. I do believe in the agency store model. I think there's a lot of legitimacy and makes sense in that. But I will say that there's, you are taking one from another. In other words, like the argument in Rustico was that it would reduce the amount of traffic into Rustico. And now I know sales did increase in general by the agency stores, but is there a sense from the Liquor Control Commission what is sustainable, or how many more can be added, or because as I look at the map, it looks like pretty well every community is covered. And, as far as your main communities within a region, if I take Tyne Valley, but are we going to have, eventually agency stores in Freeland and Conway? Where does this end? And what's your opinion and view on that?
Well, good question. So, as you would be aware, the agency store was a decision by the government of the day to expand that or to add another agency store would be a decision not by the commission. We could certainly recommend it. I'd be real careful on speaking on that, only because I wouldn't want to share an opinion of ours. We're careful to try not to have opinions on certain topics. As far as whether they can support them or not, it's a tricky situation, the agency store, because you get into RFPs and you get into, in certain communities, picking a winner. And I can name certain communities that don't have one now, that if it was the decision to put one in there, it would be detrimental to the businesses that didn't get it compared to the ones that did. So it is a balancing act. for sure, and one that we certainly look at and make recommendations on, but at the end of the day, it is the decision of the government of the day.
Robbie?
One other thing I'll add into the equation, it was always something that went through my mind as a minister too, was that, our staffing complement, we have, I think, really tremendous staff. They're very well trained, they're very capable, and product knowledge, the list goes on. And, in general terms, liquor store staffing is usually a complement of the sales that are out of that particular store. We don't have, way out of whack as far as every liquor store doesn't have the same amount of staff and hours and things of that nature. And, these are rural communities, and when you transfer sales to go from, say the O'Leary store to say some store in Bloomfield or something, if that occurred, then you run into, the possible impacts it has on those staff. And those are decent paying positions in our community. So I think that should be something that's always part of the equation, I guess, in thinking about how you do that. But in general terms, what is your policy for staffing around liquor stores? I mean, obviously agency stores you don't, but.
One thing I could say was, whenever was it Wellington, the last one? Whenever the Wellington store was churned from a corporate store to an agency store, one thing that we scored within the RFP was, a respondent's willingness to take on the staff that were in that corporate store. And the successful respondent did take the staff on. In terms of kind of overall staffing, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Different stores, different sales determine how many staff and hours and things like that. And it is a balancing act. We have our senior management and our store managers are really highly regarded within the organization. They do a really good job of managing that. When you look at some of our employee wellness scores and things like that, it's something that as a corporation we're really proud of.
Rob?
When it came to the COVID, when that decision was made, the decision basically was to shut the liquor stores down. I find it hard to believe that the Liquor Control Commission didn't see what the outcome would have been when those stores were shut down. Did you make recommendations to the Chief Public Health Officer or to government to say that this might be a bad decision?
No, we didn't make recommendations. As everybody's aware, it was very fast moving times. Everybody's kind of doing the best they could. Our agency stores stayed open, so communities were still served. There were three stores that reopened relatively quickly after. I believe it was March 19th they closed.
Yes.
And then there was 3 stores reopened with new guidelines, would have been kind of in the University Avenue location, Granville Street in Summerside, and I think Montague opened up, was it? Yes. By the end of the month? 28th. Yeah, on the 28th. So they were closed from the 19th to the 28th. Those 3 reopened, and then other stores trickled down. But, there wasn't a lot of time for consultation back and forth during those fast-moving times. So we complied with whatever the Chief Public Health Office recommended, or no, it wasn't a recommendation, what they required us to do.
Rob?
You had no feedback into that at all. I mean, like I say, to me, it seemed like that was an obvious outcome that occurred, that there's many people, unfortunately, are dependent on the product, and they were impacted pretty negatively on that. And of course, I think the Liquor Control Commission or the government, whoever made the decision, well, that wasn't a good decision. So would there be lessons learned to say that if this ever happened again, or there's future shutdowns, that the liquor stores won't be impacted as much? I mean, like I said, maybe you have to still close some, but.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd be cautious to answer. I mean, it's probably a question for the CPHO office. I mean, we know what happened. They closed on the 19th, and it was seen perhaps as a lesson learned to let's reopen 3 main stores shortly thereafter under new guidelines. But I will say, it was realized, let's get them reopened, but with serious changes as well in terms of plexiglass, security, number of customers in the store. The way customers were able to shop changed dramatically, in the fact that there was no roaming through the store. You got to the front of the line, you told one of our staff what you wanted, they went and got it, met you at the cash register. You're protected by plexiglass, and you paid and left. And so, you know, some of those questions might be better answered by somebody else, but, you know, that's, yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, and I can appreciate it. Tough to know all those things at the time, but I mean, it just seemed to me that was pretty obvious. I guess my final question is going to be just more around obviously the Moth Lane breweries in my district, and you know, they seem to be doing a pretty good business there as far as to try and establish. They've been impacted by COVID. Obviously, the sales aren't quite the same as they once were, but you know, they bring up to me from when I drop in for get my growler filled up, you know, the whole issue around this no touch, no tax concept, where, you know, they make a product, they deliver the product, they sell the product. Really, the Liquor Control Commission doesn't have much responsibility in that. But can you give me a sense of how much revenue that the Liquor Control Commission generates from those breweries that are basically arguing on this no touch, no tax concept? Just to give me a sense of how significant it is.
So I'll just let Carl get settled back in here. So the no touch, no tax policy is something that, say, the Craft Brewers Association have lobbied government for, along with the LCC. We, I guess, look at it a little more globally, in the fact of what overall does the government and commission do for the craft brewers. So although they may not be getting exactly what they want in terms of no touch, no tax that they're looking for, we may do these 2 or 3 other things that Jamie talked about before that are supportive. So we look at it overall, are we supportive? We feel we are. There's always some tweaks and changes that could be made. But in terms of, Carl, for example, on the no touch, no tax, I know we did look at it recently. Do you know right off the number, if that policy was, say, eliminated, what that number is? I have a number. I have a number in my head, but I don't want to say the wrong one. Just because we talked about it recently.
I believe it's in the. It's over $1 million in total, I believe, when we look at both.
$1.3 million
Yeah.
calculation.
Okay, Gord?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming in. It's great. It was a great presentation. Just had a few questions on your social responsibility piece, and you listed a lot of great initiatives, and that's very important. How much of your percentage of your revenue goes towards social responsibility? I don't know if I missed that.
I can't give you a percentage. I can give you a rough ballpark dollar amount, and then maybe Carl can translate it into a percentage. But our annual expenses on the liquor side for SR, I believe, $100,000 to $150,000 a year. I think that'd be a fair number, Carl.
Yes, and it varies year to year. We do have a budgeted line item in there of $100,000, but we've got a couple other budget line items in there that are similar, so we can move between those 2 lines. If MAD comes forward with a new program, or like the Keep It Social program was new to us, and we spent more than $150,000 in that particular year because of the startup costs associated with it. But it's been a tremendous program. The feedback from the students has just been phenomenal.
Gord?
And what would you say your focus is after COVID? What is COVID? What is the last year? Has your direction changed with that? Sorry, go ahead, Quinn.
No, good question. In terms of COVID, the impacts really can't be overstated when it comes to, from our human resources point of view. The changes, as fast as they were, and the reactions of senior management and staff, SOAR staff in particular, it was really tough. Their work days, the way their days would look before compared to after, especially as soon as we reopened, were vastly different. And how they reacted to that is something that we're very proud of. The summer months, we see a spike on the LCC side because of you know, we have 1 million people plus here that aren't here the rest of the time, and they're buying lots of things, and alcohol is one of them. So those, that would have been our main impact beyond the time that the stores were closed. How I see it post-COVID is hard to really say exactly. It would be nice to have things back to normal, but I don't know when that's going to be, and what our focus will be. Hopefully we'll get back to our normal business, making recommendations to government on changes, hopefully with a lot more people in our stores, especially in the summer months.
Gord?
Yeah, and I guess that's a great answer, and I guess my question has to do with your social responsibility piece. You know, moving forward, because with being in the health committee, and we had 2 specific recommendations to the Legislative Assembly on, you know, being socially responsible with drinking. Like there was Jennifer Abert told the committee that enforcement and education are tools available to help lower the rates of impaired driving on Prince Edward Island, as punitive measures have yet to influence impaired driving rates. Your committee suggested more weight be placed on the public education and awareness. So that's just a little excerpt from that. So that was presented in November, and I just wanted to ask, has your focus changed? We found out that there's major issues with drinking and driving during COVID, and how has your direction changed to help the social responsibility piece?
What I can say, which may partly answer your question, is the Liquor Commission of recent has had conversations with the Chiefs Police Association for the province, which includes the superintendent for the RCMP and the police chiefs for the Charlottetown, Summerside, and Kensington municipal police forces around impaired driving. And in that regard, we have offered significant financial resources to the association. If they wish to put together any type of promotions, be it video, any type of media relative to impaired driving or things along that line, and that would cover both the liquor and cannabis portfolios. So we'll wait and see what comes out of that, but we've made that offer. In the meantime, we continue with any of our ads, including our marketing ads. There's always a socially responsible message in tone within that, and it usually ends with, please drink responsibly, consume cannabis responsibly, whatever the case may be. So consumption continues to be a focus of us. The impaired driving is as well. Always will be at the forefront of our operations when it comes to socially responsible messaging.
Okay, Gord?
And I'm super glad to hear this, because I think we're all hands-on for this right now over the last little while, and some of the information we found in the other committees is very important to Islanders. So I'd like to thank you for saying that the funding is going to increase from that, and I think it's imperative. So thank you very much. Good Chair.
Okay, do you guys have a question? Okay, before we start another round, I just put in a couple of my own questions here. I just wanted to, on the financials for a moment, so you were forecasting for the PEI Cannabis Management Corporation a loss of $137,000. You actually saw revenues of $653,000, I believe. Can you tell me what caused that?
Well, those stores closed our fiscal year, and of course March 31st, and those stores were closed until May, sometime in May. So we would have revised our budget because of those store closures.
Budget for last year, fiscal 20, was $300,000.
Was it?
No, our revised budget for this coming year.
For this coming year, it's a
Yeah.
$137,000 loss.
Right, for the current year?
Yes.
Okay, so
And that is
what,
because of the store closures.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting, okay. So how close were you then to forecast on this current year?
$300,000 over for last fiscal year
Okay,
from our original budget. And the reasons behind that are varied. very difficult to forecast or put a plan into place when there's really not a whole lot of history. We've only been in operation for 6 months at that point in time.
Right.
When we were putting, not even then, when we put the plan together for fiscal '20. So some external factors played into it. Our sales were not quite where we wanted it to be as far as our penetration goes, although that has been increasing again this year, in the latter part of this fiscal year. We lost a little bit when we shut down because people went to their local suppliers rather than to us because physically they had no access other than the online component. So they just reverted back to what they used to do. Now we're bringing that market back into our stores, and it's coming back with a vengeance. As far as our customer counts are starting to increase, our spend per customer is starting to increase, so we're starting to get that market back.
Okay. So for fiscal year ending March 2020, what was your forecast?
A $300,000 profit,
Okay.
and it ended up at 600, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So in March 2020, the Director General for Health Canada presented to the UN, and they were talking about the successes that they were seeing in Canada. And one of the numbers that they had put out was how much of the market share of the illicit drug market had they pulled. So they had pulled, they reported that approximately 30% of the illicit market share was now legal through legal sources because of the legislation. In your 2020 report, you had reported 40%. Is that a provincial number? And are those numbers that are publicly accessible?
I think that's a Stats Can number nationally, and I don't know if there was ever, if it was drilled down provincially.
Okay. And do you know what the illicit market is in PEI?
No,
So,
they haven't told us.
okay. So when you go through your strategic planning, and one of your pillars is to take market share from the illicit market, what is the percentage that you're trying to achieve if you don't know what the total market
100.
number is? 100.
Well, I mean, in an ideal world, that's the goal, is that it's a federal initiative, obviously, but the goal is to eliminate the illicit market.
Okay. And is there a time frame in which that's supposed to be achieved? I'm just struggling with where the numbers, so you would come up with sales numbers to achieve that performance measurement that you're looking to achieve. So how fast do you expect to ramp up in order to take that market share away?
It's going to be a 3 to 5 year window, simply because you're changing people's mindset. And you're trying to convince them that the product that we have is as good or better than what you're buying on the street. Plus, it's a lot safer because it goes through all kinds of quality control testing at the various manufacturers. If you're into liquids, ingestibles, it goes through a whole bunch of food Health Canada requirements in order to hit the market. Whereas the stuff you buy on the street, you don't know. And that's what we're trying to educate our consumer with, is that we are a safe place to buy it.
Yeah, and that's fair. Obviously, that's the way that, we want to move. So the price of cannabis products that you would find at the store, how does that compare with what the street prices that you would see?
It has driven down the street price, us being in operation. But we've made some deals with our suppliers. They're coming in with different pricing, which is helping us to decrease our selling price, which it's going to become a commodity here over the next 3 to 4 years, where it's going to, the price is going to be minimal difference between what you're going to pay in the street and what you would pay in our store.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I guess one other question, you capture a lot of metrics, so I'm assuming that you kind of survey each customer or take some sort of stats from the customers that go into your store. Do you have any ideas to how many people would be first-time users versus somebody who's coming into the store, on a regular basis, knowledgeable, et cetera?
No, we wouldn't have that detail.
Okay. All right, I'm going to do another round. Okay, great. Carla's on the list. Do you guys have any? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to do a follow-up to your question. I'm wondering, in an attempt to kind of, I'm going to use the word sway customers away from the illicit market and into our stores, I'm wondering how you handle feedback. So, for example, I've heard that in the edibles, it was felt or that there wasn't enough cannabinoid content in the edibles, and so people weren't happy with them, which would inevitably drive them to the illicit market. I know that packaging was an issue, and that was something that has been talked about. So I'm wondering how you're handling those types of feedback to meet that strategic goal.
As far as the packaging, we have no control on that. We can provide feedback to Health Canada, which we and other cannabis boards across the country have done. We do customer surveys, but first, we also have to be mindful of what's available from suppliers, and sometimes say this is still a very new industry, and what's available in the black market oftentimes, or I shouldn't say necessarily oftentimes, but on occasion is not available legally. But if we can change our portfolio to meet customer needs and get it from a supplier, then we do react. And since the store is opened, we've had a significant change or additions to the portfolio, and that'll continue. As I said in my presentation, unlike liquor where it's regular calls, if you will, very stagnated throughout the year, with cannabis, it fluctuates. We could go a call tomorrow and then do 2 or 3 next week. It's just the industry is moving so fast, and we want to respond as quick as we can to the customer's needs.
Carla?
Thank you, Chair. Of course, we know supporting local right now is massive, and one of the things that local craft brewers were advocating for, and distilleries and cideries and wineries, was the ability to continue delivery after the pandemic. So I know that legislation has been changed, and now they're able to do that. And now they're talking about, in further efforts to support local, if they're delivering kegs to licensees, that allows them to, allow consumers to try their product, and it gives kind of a bit of allowance for education and different tastes and that sort of thing. And so one of the things they're wondering is now they're able to deliver kegs, but what about bottles and cans in order to better support local? Is this something that you've heard? Is this something that you're interested in pursuing?
Well, if I understand what you're questioning, I believe that goes back to what some refer to as the no tax, no touch policy, and as I alluded to earlier, we're aware of it, but we're also aware of the implications to the bottom line, our return to the province. Our best guess and estimations on that right now, I believe it was around $1.3 million in total would be the hit to us on that. So we're also mindful of the things that we do for these local suppliers, which some of the other maritime or Atlantic boards aren't doing. We'll continue those discussions with them, also our own internal discussions, ongoing discussions with our minister, and eventually get direction as to what may or may not be done in that regard.
Carla?
Thank you, Chair. So moving on now, on page 22 of the PEI Liquor Control Commission annual report, and on page 23 of the cannabis report, it talks about always recruit, retain, and develop the best people. I'm wondering who is responsible for deciding who are the best people?
Well, it's a senior management, or when we do staffing, filling up positions, and I think that's been demonstrated in some of our more recent postings and who were successful. I can think of store managers, and one in particular, and who started with us as a clerk, proved himself, worked extra hard, took extra training, took product knowledge, took all the training in that regard, elevated himself from a clerk to a senior clerk, and was recently promoted as a store manager. Obviously, at the end of the day, the actual final decisions, as everybody would know, doesn't rest with the Liquor Control Commission, but our recommendations are respected, and that's a good example of being upheld and moving on. And say we've had a number of positions filled over the last number of months, and they were all internal promotions where people worked themselves up. And so in that regard, I would see that as training, recruiting, and keeping the best people that we got.
The process follows the Public Service Commission, like the advertisement of positions, who's eligible under union contracts, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that we have to abide by because we're part of the union contract. And there is a series of questions for an interview, we'll say, that gets developed, and everybody gets asked those questions and they get rated based upon their answers to those questions. And at the end of the day, the best rated candidate is the one that's put forward.
Carla?
Thank you, Chair. And I agree when you go into the establishments, it's evident that the employees are happy there. They provide a great level of service. One of the things that I've noticed since being elected is, and I'm sure that everyone in this room could agree, is one of the biggest phone calls I get is from people saying, "Hi, can you call the PEI Liquor Control Commission or the Cannabis Management Corporation? Tell them you're my MLA, I'm looking for a job. That's what they need for me to get the job." And so I spend a large amount of my time, and some people get very upset because I say, that's not the practice, that's not the hiring practice. And they say, well, that's what I was told by other people who have been hired and that sort of thing. And so I'm very clear in my stance on that is no, that's not, that I will not do that. This is on your own merit. So I guess I'm not quite sure what my question is, but obviously this must have been part of the hiring process in the past or must have helped somehow for this narrative to be so strong. And so I'm wondering if that's something that you've heard. Is that something, I just don't know where this comes from. I'm wondering.
I don't know where you come, say, I couldn't hear everything that Carl said, but I mean, we follow the guidelines or requirements of the Public Service Commission when it comes to filling our classified positions. And say, as you alluded to, the staff are happy. We've moved people up in the ranks as vacancies occur, and those that are the best are rising to the top because of their fortitude, their intuition, willingness to do additional study, and so that's the way I say I'm not aware of what you're speaking to in terms of these classified positions now.
Okay, I think Carla has a follow-up, and then we're going to go.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate that. And anytime I question anywhere, that's kind of the answer that I get. I just don't know where that's coming from. And there's lots of departments on PEI where we see nepotism and partisanship being kind of a way to get ahead. And so I'm happy to hear that that there is that solid process. I'll continue to combat that narrative and hope that we all will do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. Corey?
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering about the mystery shopper, I guess, initiative. Or do you find there's a lot of is there a lot of violations found, or?
Do you have those numbers, Jamie?
I don't have numbers on top of me, but what I would say is that average scores with the agency stores and the liquor stores on the liquor end are probably in the 85 to 90% in terms of the ID checking. On the cannabis side, to date, it's been 100%.
Corey?
And when we do find
sorry.
violations, if I may add, we immediately follow up with the store owner or store manager, as the case may be. And if we can identify, and usually we are able to identify the staff member, then we have a conversation with that staff member as well.
Corey?
Do you have how many violations there have been in the past?
Yeah, if you're looking for,
I guess what would a good guess be?
wouldn't even want to guess on that one. I'm giving you a percentage, around 85% is the success rate. But some months it can be 100% too, so it fluctuates because these checks are done on a monthly basis.
Corey?
What's the penalty if you violate them?
Well, depending on, say, when we use the mystery shopper, these people are actually of age. So the fact of the matter is, if they were sold a product without being ID'd, it's really not against the law because they were of age. However, it's a violation, if you will, of our working policies. So in that regard, it would be an internal confidential thing that we deal with that particular staff member in terms of consultation, discussion, and trusting that it won't happen again.
Corey?
And is that similar with an agency store?
Agency stores, we would have a conversation with the manager and, if necessary, the owner, if the owner is different from the manager and the staff. Yeah.
Corey?
My private members bill, which passed just over a year ago, I guess how much of a wrench did that throw into the cannabis corporation?
I wouldn't say it necessarily through really any wrench, because at the end of the day, we're subject to the direction of the government, and whatever government policy is, it's our job as administrators to put it in place. So we continue to operate as is, and if government sometime down the road decide to change what the Cannabis Management Corporation is allowed to sell, then we'll adjust our administration, delivery, and purchasing procedures and move ahead.
Corey?
And so that bill has restricted the sale, so I guess how has it affected the sale of cannabis? You can't like vaporize or? We can't sell
Vaping products, if that, yeah, that's correct. No, we can't. No.
It's probably affected our suppliers more so because they obviously want to sell it here and in any jurisdiction that they can. As our CEO mentioned, I mean, we've seen additional changes. A year after this was legalized, edibles became legal. So there was new product streams brought on board. You know, this is a new industry. If there are more changes to allow for vaping, then we will adjust again.
Corey?
Would you get a lot of complaints or people inquiring like looking to do that?
More feedback probably from suppliers than we have had from customers to date.
Corey? You're good. Sid?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Your online sales for cannabis, can you speak more to that? It's obviously, you know, what I would consider quite low right now. Can you speak to that, and then more, you know, maybe industry in general, and if there's what movement there is to you know, I'll say increase online sales?
Yeah, it was one of our surprises as Carl and Jamie talked about it. When you're budgeting for a new industry, it's, you know, some of it you're going off. You know, there were some studies by different consulting firms around the country that had, you know, your sales based on population should be this, and so we were using some of those numbers to come up with our budgets. We had our online budget. We had budgeted our online sales to be a lot more than they were. Our first full year, I think they were, you know, in the 1% range, which surprised us as well. This year, I think year to date they're in the 9 to 10% range, which was obvious because of the store closures. I don't know the numbers, Carl, perhaps you could speak to since the stores have reopened. I know our numbers are still up, but have they maintained that when people got used to shopping online?
We're down from the peak period of COVID, but it's still maintaining way above where it was a year ago. a good day a year ago would have been 3, maybe 4 sales online in a day. We built the platform expecting a lot of people who would not want to be seen publicly purchasing the product. And it seems that people's attitude is now that it's a legal product. Why should I be ashamed to walk in and buy it? So you see people there, they come in, suits, ties, right from work, wherever. And there's no stigma associated with that, such as there was back in the early 60s and late 50s around alcohol. We don't seem to see that now, and as a result, the need for our platform is not as great as we thought it would be, but we still have to have that in place in order to be able to service all of PEI. Because there are places, there are people that are mobility restricted who can't get to our store, and this is their only option.
Sid?
Thank you, Chair. Can you speak to the format for your online sales? Is it in-person delivery, or is it through the mail?
We've contracted a third-party delivery agency, and as part of that contract price, they're required to do age verification for us. So you may buy it online, you might be using somebody else's credit card to get it, but when they go to the door to deliver it, they're supposed to get age verification. Now, as part of COVID, they restricted the signature aspect of it, but they were taking people's IDs, et cetera.
Sid?
Thank you, Chair. And is that delivery cost passed on to the consumer directly?
A portion of it is. We don't charge 100% of what it costs us to deliver it, because it would put us at a disadvantage. Your local supplier in the illicit market delivers and he doesn't charge.
Sid?
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if that, is the biggest impediment to the online sales, is that additional charge, and if you compared yourselves to other jurisdictions?
The board's approval with COVID, I believe we now do free, there's no delivery charge for any order that's $100 or more. Prior that was, so we made that permanent. I think the other thing that probably surprised us with online sales was, and this was customer feedback, was that customers were wanting to interact with staff relative to the knowledge of the product, and the best way to get that was face-to-face conversation with staff. And I think we underestimated, as did many of the provinces across the country, the importance of that face-to-face conversation with a knowledgeable staff member, particularly people who had never used the product before and wanted to try a recreational cannabis product for whatever reason.
Sid, thank you. Next is Rob.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions, I guess, remaining and more on the cannabis side of things. And I noticed you sell seeds and plants at our liquor stores or our cannabis stores. How have you found the sales of that go? Because I guess back when I was minister, we were Minister of Health, and we had different departments that were kind of working together to try to figure out the impacts that this would have. And I guess one of the comments that I had made at the time was that it's like growing a garden. A lot of people have the great intentions of growing a garden, but when they actually, the work involved isn't sometimes worth it. So I'm wondering if the seed sales have met expectations or will meet expectations, or what your sense of that is.
No, it's below what we expected it to be.
Right.
And for very similar reasons as you just spoke about, great intentions, but it is a lot of work. And I know people who've tried to grow it, and it works fine in the house when you're doing that thing in the spring, but when you transplant it outside, it's died for whatever reason.
Rob?
Exactly. Anyway, just wanted to comment that I noticed that you have the O'Leary liquor store on your presentation cover, so I thank you for that. But it's a fertilizer spreader was leaving, so that's why I was wondering if they were maybe fertilizing the plants that were there on the picture. But in the presentation, though, you mentioned you have 4 stores, and but I do know there's a 5th store out in the province, in my district. I'm wondering, is that something that you have any control over as a cannabis store, the store on Lennox Island? I don't.
Rob?
Why?
That was the explanation that was given us by legal counsel.
Robbie?
Play any role as far as supporting them, as far as getting the product? They do that all on their own?
So,
Rob?
That's fine, thanks.
Okay, Gord?
Yeah, thank you. Just a few questions on cannabis. In the 2020 annual report, it indicates that 58.5% of sales and revenues are generated in the Charlottetown location. Do you think there's a need for another store in the greater Charlottetown area?
We've looked at it. We think eventually that need will be there. Currently, it's not. We can still handle it where we are. But there may be a need someplace, either downtown or Stratford or Cornwall area, someplace like that. But it's not quite there yet in order to support the additional expenses it's going to cost to set it up.
Gord?
Yeah, no, that was my kind of follow-up question. Where would it be, downtown or Stratford or Cornwall? Because it is a busy area, and there's nothing you can do about this. But it is that location is incredibly busy. There's people walking across from the superstore. We need to really look at traffic control in that area. Not your response. Well,
No,
yeah.
it's a well-taken point, and we are always looking at store operations and locations all the time. I will say, whenever the RFPs did go out, I don't think it's a secret that we did struggle with the Charlottetown location and getting a number of respondents. Commercial space is at a premium in the greater Charlottetown area right now, and it did take us a while to get any location at all. Yeah.
Okay, Gord?
Comment, so that might be on your radar. Do you see eventually the private sector role for distribution of cannabis products and PEI? Do you see that as moving towards that? Now we have had a couple of years of, is there any discussion?
Referring to private stores?
Yeah, like any kind of privatization or.
Sure. I mean, obviously, it's a government decision. We would execute any decisions the government made. We'll say, I think kind of anecdotally, whenever this was becoming legalized, I think a lot of people assumed or thought this was going to be kind of the golden goose. And, there's a lot of upfront costs, capital expenditures to get involved in any business, especially one brand new industry like this, a regulated industry. So when you look at our numbers over our first kind of year and a half in business, I think that would give some people pause in doing it. But having said that, if government saw fit to do some form of privatization, then we would execute those plans on their behalf.
Gord?
Just my last two. How much federal excise tax did CMC receive in 2019-20 fiscal year?
It's collected directly by the province. It doesn't flow through our organization at all.
Okay, Gord?
Okay. No, that's it for now. Thanks very much.
Okay. I know Carl is on the list, but if anybody else wants to get back on the list, I'm just gonna ask a couple questions before we go back around again. I just wanted to ask about the other income that you have listed in your financials. And I know some of that goes to marketing income. There's a note. The note doesn't really give a whole lot of detail, though, as to where that's coming from.
This is in liquors.
You might as well give it to me for both. I'm curious as to a breakdown of what that looks like in both of
The
them.
bulk of that amount that's in liquor is where we would have a limited time offer. So this product goes on sale. It's normally $20. It went on sale for $15. That $5 sales price is paid for by the supplier. And accounting rules will not allow me to put that dollar value back up in the top line. I must put it down there as other sales.
Okay, that's fair. And same with cannabis?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to go back to the strategic plan, the 3-year strategic plan. Where are you in that cycle? What year are you currently in before you're going to be revising your strategic plan?
It's revised every year.
Okay.
And then it goes 3 years out.
It's a rolling.
Right.
And have you aligned the Commission and the Cannabis Corp? Are they're in the same?
Yes.
Well, okay. And you had stated that you use an external auditor, you have the option to use the Auditor General, but for reasons, you've gone external. Can you break down what those reasons were?
We're essentially a business organization, and not saying the Auditor General would not have that expertise available to them, but we're looking for suggestions on how we can make our operation better. So an external auditor deals with private industry, retail operations. So we're looking for that kind of feedback to come from them. Oh, did you ever think of this kind of point of sale instead of the one you're getting? Or have you considered this, or have you considered that? That's the kind of feedback we're looking for. We want to tighten it up, because every dollar that we can make, that's a dollar that taxpayers don't have to pay.
Okay, and that's fair, thank you. The audit committee members that you had, there's 5 of them, I believe you said?
5 total board members, there's 3
On the
audit
audit.
committee.
Are they the same for both the Liquor Commission
Yes.
and the Cannabis? Okay. Carla, I'm going to go to you.
Okay, just a quick question. I'm curious on if you have, would it be you directly as PEI LCC, the chair, the board, would it be you that has the relationship with Island Schools in terms of education and harm reduction?
No.
Okay.
Carla?
Thank you. And so earlier, Jamie, you alluded to that you give money to different organizations. I think you said to do kind of education sessions or create materials. So you have nothing to do with the creation of materials, basically. Do you have any say on what goes into the materials?
We have limited range because we look to the experts, particularly in health. Like I can recall a number of years ago where the Liquor Commission had produced a number of, I'll call them social responsibility publications. We then had consultations and discussions with the Department of Health and Social Services, it was called at that time. And it was their suggestion that we pull these particular documents and they would assist us and actually take the lead in producing, I'll call them made in PEI, more relevant to the island population. We're more than willing to accept that expertise and provide whatever funding within reason, obviously, that the department requires. So that's what we did. Moving forward into today's current year and moving forward, say in the past, recent past, the department came to us looking for funding to support some initiatives that they want to move forward, educating island residents around low-risk drinking guidelines, which had been put in place. So I believe there was 2 or 3 fiscal years in a row where the department came to us looking for monies, be it for TV ads, radio ads, printed publications, and we provided that funding. Say we made a recent offer, we've had recent discussion with the Chiefs Police Association, and we've offered them a significant amount of money to do, if they wish to do so, impaired driving campaigns that would target both the liquor and cannabis aspects. So those would be the two off the top of my head that I would see as prime, particularly the Department of Health and Wellness.
Carla?
We
Oh, sorry.
deal with the schools, but that's more indirectly. We pay for the school presentations that MAG Canada does. We leave it with MAG. We do initial contact with schools, then MAG Canada contacts each school to see if they're interested, set up the dates of the presentations, and then they bill us.
Carla?
Thank you, Chair. Just have 2 more questions. So I can imagine the fine dance that is kind of the social responsibility, especially on PEI, where the number of people who are harmfully involved with alcohol in particular. So I'm wondering, how do you balance, how do you balance that, the growth of sales, which is the goal, with kind of that social responsibility? How do you monitor that?
You're absolutely right. It is, we are a corporation who, the money that is made through the corporation is returned to government to go to help pay for essential services. So it is something that is top of mind all the time. One thing I would say, a trend that we've seen at the corporation has been, although we've seen revenues increase every year for 24 straight years, there hasn't, we track liters sold, and there hasn't been, over the last number of years, there hasn't been large spikes in liters sold. We've seen a trend towards premiumization, people buying maybe a little bit higher quality brand, not necessarily more of it.
Interesting. Carla?
That is very interesting, thank you for that. And just one last question, we talked about this a little bit before. I'm just wondering, as part of your strategic plan, is there something in there about growing the number of local products within the PEI LCC and in the Cannabis Management Corporation?
I wouldn't say that it'd be our role to help, to spur the private industry. We do offer, as mentioned before, support, and if there is in terms of shelf space, if someone is local, they can get shelf space compared to if somebody is a retail or a manufacturer in Australia or something like that, they would have, more difficult time getting shelf space than somebody local can get it. Yeah.
Okay, Carla, you're
One
good?
other thing I might add, just for your information, is with liquor, as I say, we dictate when the calls will come from suppliers, and we'll receive calls. Unlike with island suppliers, if an island supplier comes up with a new product and wants to get it listed with us, they can make the application any time of the year, 24/7. We accept it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I just have a couple more questions. You mentioned 27 recommendations. Can you tell me what study or where those 27 recommendations came from? Was that the Liquor Commission put forward those 27 recommendations, and are they public, or were they to government?
They came under the directive of the previous administration. It was an internal review that we conducted through a staff member, and there were consultations held. So these were not PEI LCC management recommendations, or these were the recommendations as a result of those consultations.
And sorry, so can you clarify though who came up with the recommendations? If it wasn't commission?
It was an employee, a former employee of the Liquor Control Commission we brought back to do the study. That individual then went out and did consultations, including with, for example, the Department of Health was one. Consultations, if I recall correctly, all the licensees, or a number of there was a licensee survey done, which would include bars, restaurant owners, our wineries, distilleries, microbrewery owners, ferment on premises license holders. I believe there was also discussions with some of the federal agencies as well. And then as a result of that, the report was written, and there was 27 recommendations that came forward that were presented to the Liquor Commission Board.
Okay, thank you. And so it was a report that was commissioned by the Liquor Commission, and then you're reviewing them internally to see if they are recommendations that you will accept. Do you expect that those 27 recommendations will be accepted?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that. As I indicated earlier, some of the recommendations were a continuation of some of the things that we were already doing, so we can tick those off. And then since then, and I don't have the numbers, or exact numbers in front of me, but I believe there's probably 3 or 4 maybe that have since been done. And say some of them involve just not necessarily a decision by the board to approve it. It may require government approval, be it through a regulation or an act amendment. And the most recent one was the regulation amendment on the dining rooms. There are 3 others that we're currently exploring. They have been presented to our minister, and we'll see where they go. A number of the other recommendations will require further analysis and research before we would be prepared to make any kind of, as far as the management team, a recommendation to Chairman Bevan and our board, and then from in turn, a recommendation on to our minister.
Okay.
For the government then to consider.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And I guess my final question, it's just around, I guess, some of the regulations. As you said, the legislation was drafted in 1947, and it's been altered to accommodate some other types of businesses, like, for instance, vineyards here on the island that grow here locally, but also cideries. My understanding is that you actually have to plant an orchard to open up a cidery. Am I accurate in saying that there's...
No, you're not. Depends on what's in the product of the cider, actually. The current regulations and act around the winery were implemented, if my memory serves me correctly, around 2007. Prior to that, we had one winery license with very few details around it. At that time, we did a major review, had it approved by government of the day, changes the act and the regulations on wineries. We actually created 3 classifications, and that was based on the Nova Scotia model with a built-in PEI expectation around that. Moving forward, the winery industry, how quickly things change, there's some aspects of that license, which was created, say, I believe around 2007, 2008, that probably need to be fine-tuned. One of the things that we've seen is the growing of the cidery, as you've indicated. And under the Act and the regulations, it does require the planting of an apple orchard and having a minimum of acreage. However, in consultation with the federal government, we found a way to qualify people without having to have the apple orchard, and that's what we actually did with one particular case that I'm aware of. And it depends on what's put into the product in addition to the apple itself or whatever is being made. And so, without boring you with the intimate details, the fact of the matter is, yes, you can get a cidery depending on what's in the recipe without actually having to have the orchard.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So I don't have any further questions. If no further questions, I'd like to thank you very much for coming in, and this has been very informative to us. And I think I would also like to recognize that, your annual reports were posted yesterday. I guess I do have one more question. So there was a delay in the reports. So based on the legislation, the filing would have been by October 1st. It's 3 months after the close of the fiscal year. What was the delay? I know it's only 3 months, and I put you in the very highest top category of getting your reports out on time. So I do want to give you that kudos, but I'm just wondering what the delay was.
COVID-19 affected
Okay.
us dramatically. Initially, for the first 6-8 weeks, we couldn't let anybody in the building.
Right.
Period. Like, staff wasn't allowed in. We had people work from home. And when you're doing an audit and they're trying to select information, you need access to paper.
Yeah.
If you can't come in the building, you can't get access to the paper. So all of this, and then you got into a situation where, because they couldn't do the work with us
It's a
and to
domino.
other customers, now they're in a position where they're trying to do 8 months worth of work in 3 months.
Right. Okay.
And they did yeoman work getting us to the point that we were at.
Right. Okay, that's fair. And like I said, I do want to acknowledge that, you got them out in a timely manner, given that there was obstacles, obviously, for you to do that. So, again, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank you for coming in. And we're going to take just a quick recess, and we'll finish off our agenda. Thanks. All right, and we are back. So we'll move on to number 4 on the agenda. That's review of correspondence. There was a couple of letters that went out. Ryan quickly was able to pull together the decisions that we made last week. So those 2 letters have gone out. And when we get to scheduling, the AG has responded. So I'll let Ryan just comment on that. And besides that, the letters for the departments are being prepared and they've been signed off, I believe, and they'll be going out shortly. I would like to recognize, in addition to those 2 annual reports, we saw 2 other annual reports to go out. So I'd just like to recognize the Housing Corporation did file theirs for 2017, 2018, and so did the Department of Transportation. So good to see those ones out. Any other correspondence to review? Okay. So we'll move to the review of scheduling. I'll just get Ryan to talk about the next upcoming meeting.
Sure. The next meeting will be next Tuesday at 9:30 again. The Auditor General will be here to talk about the various subjects the committee agreed on last meeting.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, thank you to the auditor, the Office of the Auditor General, for getting back to us in such a timely manner. That's great. Moving on to new business. Anybody have any new business that they would like to put forward? No? I do have one thing that I would like to add, and it came out today. There was an order in council to approve an online, to proceed for an online casino similar to New Brunswick. And I would like to put forward to the committee that we ask that there be more details be provided as to what that means and what that looks like. And I just put that out for discussion with the committee. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, and so how would you like to proceed? Is it a letter out to, I guess, the department or out to ALC?
ALC.
Okay. To ask for more details around the agreement or what that would look like. Okay. And so anybody not in favor of doing that, or are we good? Okay, so we'll add that to the work plan. And if there's no further business, then I'll ask for motion to adjourn. Carla, thank you, everyone.